Thank you very much, Nicola, and a huge thank you to the entire Facet 5 team for allowing me to come and talk about this topic that I am personally passionate about, as I live it every day, and I have done for many years, for those of you who do know me a little bit better. Let's start by something, a really nice little thing to do when you're working with a team remotely, a really quick chat energizer. I would like your energy levels this morning, please, in the chat, 0 to 10. What is your energy level today, this morning, part of this session, and why is that? Are you at 0 because you've been partying all night, or are you at 10 because you're just bubbling away and feeling good about everything? Just give me a really, really, really quick, sharp indication of numbers. Let's have a look. Very good. We have some 8 to 9s. We have some... Thank you, Clarice. We have a good 9, feeling good about life. That's a nice place to be. Matteo, you're at 5 to 6. I don't know whether you can comment on that, whether you wish to comment, whether you wish to chat. Clearly a little bit less. Wojciech at 10, that's fantastic. You've definitely come out tops on that one. But some nice, that gives me a very nice indication about where we are in terms of energy levels for this session. Merit, you're at 7. I don't know whether, Merit, would you want to say a few words and introduce yourself briefly as well and tell us why you're only at 7 this morning?
Yeah, of course. Okay, hi, I'm Merit. I'm a People Smart producer since 2020, so almost 3 years now. And yeah, I'm here to take care of the technical part today. So if you have any questions, just text me in the chat. And yeah, German based in Paris. So I've been to the doctor. Sorry?
You'll write a book about that one day, Merit. My
German
life in Paris.
Biography, yeah.
Your biography, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing, everybody. Because we are short of time, I won't go into a lot of depth in facilitating out for different thoughts, but please do put things in the chat. If you have a question or want to comment, please raise your hand. I will stop and start throughout the session. Very briefly, we've got a short amount of time to talk about a topic which is really, really essential in today's environment, with a lot of remote and hybrid teams out there. Either we are part of one, we're part of a community as a team member of a remote or hybrid team, or we are leading and orchestrating projects in that same format. The skills required for leaders is where I'm going to focus today. But clearly a lot of the things I will talk about, probably you can see them also as being essential as when you are part of a team as well. In terms of my background, some of you already know this, but very briefly for those who don't, 30 years of experience. The first 12 plus were spent in corporations. And then I decided that I would like the idea of the entrepreneurial journey. So I founded People Smart over 20 years ago, and it has gone from strength to strength. We are 100, in fact, more than 100 consultants globally. And we are a fully remote team across the globe, covering a lot of languages and cultures and nationalities. And we work together seamlessly on client projects across all time zones. So I do feel pretty well positioned to talk about the topic of leading remote teams, whether that be using just some core techniques or skills, or with a little bit of emotional intelligence magic, some of which I know you are fond of in terms of topic as well. So that's something about me, German, British, grew up in Holland, living in France, and very, very international in terms of my attitude. And learning Spanish, for those of you who are interested, for my sins, I'm driving my family crazy. So Mentimeter 1, Merit, can we have a little, just want to get a little of a survey and feedback from you on a scale of 0 to 10, in your minds, how critical is emotional intelligence when leading a team, a remote and hybrid team? So we have the code. You can use your smartphone. You can also use the website address and the code. Can you just flash that up and just give us some indication of how important you feel, how critical is emotional intelligence for leading a remote and hybrid team? There's no right or wrong answers. It's just to give us an indication.
Yeah, just click on the little heart when you are on the website, so I know that I can go on. Yeah.
I'm assuming, Merit, we have some responses coming in. And when you think we're ready, Merit, feel free to share what we're getting in terms of scores. Does anyone need the code again, or the address, or the number? Okay. I think we can assume that, generally speaking, you all perceive this to be a very important skill of the 7 people that have voted so far. Okay, great. That gives us a great indication. We'll come back to that again afterwards, Merit. Thank you very much. Okay, so keep that thought for now. Let me now share my slides. I'm going to introduce you to what I call the 5 super skills. I've called them that so we can remember them easily. And they're the 5 magic skills. The 5 magic skills are more focused on EI. However, the super skills are equally important. And this really is, this isn't, scientific research. This is based on just very, very, very practical experience of what it's like to lead in my case, fully remote team, and on occasions hybrid. The first super skill, and again, these skills are important when you're leading any team, but let's look at how they evolve and change shape slightly when you're leading a remote team. Sharing goals and values. I'm going to focus on values first of all. Values are the backbone of what holds us together as a team. Values are sometimes overused in terms of importance in organizations. I'm talking about real values that people in a team feel that they've contributed to in some way and built together in some way, the team values, but also feel a strong association with. Okay, so if agility or courage happens to be one of your values, you have values within People Smart, feeling a strong association to that and seeing how that plays out in your day-to-day work as part of the team is a very important factor. The goals, clearly goals are always important. I think we've learned over the last years that there is, a lot of movement. Goals can change, goals can evolve as they always have, but the speed of things has been accelerated over the last years. The 4 words that are there really for me are almost the North Star on this particular super skill. Having clear goals and being open to letting them evolve. Understanding the motivation that someone has in relation to those goals. And making sure that beyond the agreement that there is a deep understanding of how those goals can be achieved. The understanding of how they're achieved may vary. So you may have somebody in your team who's remotely located who may have a different path that they want to undertake to achieve the goal that you've set. What's important is the focus on the goal. I'm less concerned about how they get there as long as they are enjoying the process of getting there. I'm there for them as a leader if they get stuck and if there are difficulties. But it's really understanding that they may have a different path to get to the goal, which may be different to your own. We'll talk a little bit later about, working in different time zones and also working in different ways and different times of the day. So for me, the super skill 1 is very much sharing the goals and values at an individual level within the team, but also as a team, as a whole, in terms of the values that you share together. Super skill 2, simple word, coordination. Having already been on a journey of remote working, we already had within People Smart quite a good setup already about how we work together as a team. The pandemic accelerated that. So we were suddenly thrown into Zoom working, using various asynchronous collaborative platforms such as Klaxoon, such as Morale, such as Miro. And suddenly technology became almost the glue. So I've put it there as the last point on that slide, but actually it feeds into all the rest. So work is planned in quite an asynchronous way. So we will use MS Teams. If we're building a presentation together or building a proposal for clients, we'll use MS Teams or Google Sheets as the platform, the go-to platform to do that. If we are working on tasks where everyone is contributing and has a specific task that they need to deliver, which might have an impact on someone else in terms of task, we will very much use tools like Morale, Klaxoon, or Miro to actually perform those, allowing people through technology to remain efficient and coordinated, and to have a process which is not heavy and tedious. And I do emphasize that whilst deadlines are critical, as a leader, we need to be relatively flexible and agile about allowing people in a team to define the process that works for them, and working at times of the day that works for them, to not have, if you like, a negative impact on other people of the team. So this idea of coordination and seamless coordination through technology becomes a very important way of working effectively together. I could say so much more, but I'm going to just focus on the essentials. The super skill 3, team spirit and feeling a sense of belonging to other team members of part of a larger unit, I think has really accelerated. I think there are a lot of people out there who, as a result of spending so much more time working from a home office, imposed, feel very much, there is a bit of a loneliness, sort of solitary feeling. And so suddenly this sense of being part of something bigger and a team becomes even more important. So there are things that can be done that facilitate this. So whilst, yes, it's important to define face-to-face time and having dedicated team sessions and gratitude sessions and appreciation sessions to build team spirit and to build this sense of belonging as part of the team and to recognize people, it's equally important to carve out time in the agenda to have small moments of informal time together, whether that be a lunch session, organizing lunch and just having a lunch together and not having work as a topic and actually avoiding the work topic because people are working so hard in the background already, or just taking the time to celebrate and spend a non-structured moment together without necessarily a very fixed agenda. So for me, the super skill 3 around being very conscious of the spirit you set in the team and being careful that you see people feeling that they belong to something bigger than just there on their own is a very important notion. The other thing that I would suggest is not everything needs to be centralized and shaped by the leader of a team. Setting up people to work in buddy pairs or intentionally pulling yourself out of a team process. It sounds a bit strange, but actually is essential for the team to build the spirit also without you, so it performs without you on its own. So the role of the leader here is one of recognition, orchestrating involvement, in orchestrating encouragement, and kind of almost extracting self out of being always part of every moment together, so the team learns to function on its own without you, almost doing yourself out of a job. Super skill 4, attention to results, demonstrated by, I'm not a big fan of car racing, but I couldn't find anything that was demonstrated probably such an extreme as performance as I'm assuming you get when you do sort of racing and Formula One racing. I would be certainly too frightened to drive at that speed. So attention to results. So results always remain important. I have one result when I work with the team for People Smart, and that is the customer satisfied. How we get there, how we deliver on that, those are all interesting and important things to know. But at the end of the day, the barometer is the customer satisfied? And that customer may be an internal customer. So is our internal team satisfied as much as are our external client stakeholders satisfied? Now, it is attention to results. It's interesting, you see a lot of people out there in our client organizations, and we do observe this a lot because one of our specialities is helping leaders become better remote leaders and inspirational leaders for remote teams. You have to let go. You have to let go of the how-to, you have to let go of the, I think, of the details, and dictating how things could be done, should be done, because there are many different ways to get to where you're going. And I think for me, that agility around pay attention to the result and the end result, but not the road that was taken necessarily to get there. And be prepared to step in if help is required to undo knots or blockages in the system, but trust the process. Super skill 5, adaptability. I think we've all learned a lot in that space over the last years, exemplified by these wonderful birds, changing shape, having a mission going somewhere, but constant changing of shape and constant changing of allowing different people within, when birds migrate, the ones that get weaker step back and the ones that are stronger take over. So there's constant agility and adaptability required, either in the way we learn together, how we solve problems, be open to experimentation. One of the things we did literally, I would say probably 18 months ago, possibly 2 years, is we got rid of the standard operational meeting. We got rid of the, I'm telling you what you're doing, I'm doing, and you're going to tell me what you're doing. And actually, it's not particularly interesting. We were sitting in these meetings, and it was, to be honest, it was quite boring and tedious. It was just people dumping and giving us a waterfall of everything that they had ticked off on their list. And it wasn't really a, what are the topics we need to talk about where everyone else can learn? How can we help other people learn from this process together? And how can we do it in a way which is not repetitive and feels as though I'm just listening to somebody tell me what they've achieved, and I'm not really taking a lot out of this. So we scrapped the usual minutes from meetings. We scrapped the format of meetings. We said to the team, if you can't make the meeting, you can't make the meeting. We'll record it for you. You can watch it in your own time. And whenever there's something that is relevant to you, we'll speak that in the recording, and then you can watch it in your own time and you can action it in your own time. If you have something going on which is getting in the way of you being fully present in that meeting, then go and do what you need to do, because that's probably more important for you at this point in time. So it was scrapping this idea. And I think that takes adaptability and constantly reinventing. What we're doing now, is that going to be a viable way of carrying on and continuing to lead in an inspirational way this team? So focusing on learning agility, focusing on problems rather than issues that need to be unblocked rather than just transmission of information. Being proactive for each other, and allowing yourself to experiment and getting rid of that standard meeting. So, are we going to miss something? Well, you know what? In fact, no, we didn't miss anything. And whilst we still have meetings, we still have operational meetings for an hour and a half every 2 weeks on a Monday morning, which suits everyone's agenda. And most people come most of the time because it's our little team moment. We are willing to look at maybe other ways of operating to always ensure that we are top of the game. Those are the super skills 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's so much more I could say about each one, but I'm not going to. But I will ask Merit to maybe launch the second part of the Mentimeter. And I will take if you have any questions or any comments, want to observe or share any observations from what we've said so far in the chat, please do so. This would be a great time to do it. Please share any observations in the chat. Please come with any questions you have. And we're going to go to the next question. So exactly the same Mentimeter, you still should have it on the smartphone, right? I'm assuming, Merit, for people. How well do leaders lead remote and hybrid teams? So we know it's critical because you've all said 9 or 10, I think, of the results. Now we're saying, based on what you see out there in your respective fields, how well do leaders do it today? How well do leaders lead remote and hybrid teams? So we have a little bit more of a mixed bag. And it's a general question, so some people probably do it better than others. You'd expect that statistically, but others certainly may struggle more. Would anyone care to either comment or just share something in the chat as to what you're observing or what you're not observing, which gives you the score of 3, 4, 5? Anyone feeling brave to share this morning in the chat or live?
Well, I may, if no one does.
Go on, Clarice, you be brave this morning.
I'm the brave one with the energy level number 9, so I think. I voted for 5, and I would say because they are on their way and have been learning and implementing a lot during the COVID years. So they had to start, right? And they've made they had no guidance at the beginning. Now all these issues are coming into the work world. Thanks goodness for that. And they are getting guidance and are getting lots of trainings and such. So they are on their way. They are doing a lot. They are trying a lot. But it kind of come on top of the rest. So that's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
To reinvent your kind of leadership, it's not possible overnight.
Yeah, no, and Clarice, you've reflected also what Matteo has shared is this kind of, it takes time for people to adjust to this kind of new way of doing things. So that's perfectly normal, that's human. But then I think for a lot of people, Matteo, you've said it, leaders lose the sense of connection with people, focusing on a number or a procedure or less on the actual people themselves. And I think that connects very nicely to what you've said. A lot of clients that we work with have their expertise. They are engineers, they are scientists, they are cognitively, very well equipped. And yet the magic, which we'll talk about, the magic and the super skills are much more on the people side of the business. But it's very hard to let go, based on what they're used to doing and the way that they're used to doing it. And I think that builds very much on what Matteo, you've said as well. Matteo, are you able to share? I know you said you were in a team work situation. You couldn't really talk that much. Is that still the case?
So I work with, I'm not leading a remote team, okay, but I work with clients that they might have remote team. I have friends who are part of remote teams, and I mean, what I kind of observed is that this losing the connection of the prosemic with people, like they don't feel the energy, they don't have the physical connection with the others. So they are all in front of a computer. They have data, they have spreadsheet to fill in, and they have goals to reach, and everything becomes so very much rational. And they completely lose. They don't even ask what's going on in the mind of the other person. Like they just have to fill in the Excel spreadsheet within the end of the day, and that's it.
Yeah. And there's so much more to it, though, isn't there, than that? Which we all, I think, you're seeing it from a very different perspective as well. And Ava, thank you, Matteo, very much for sharing. And Ava, your comments about recognition, the importance for me of recognition. It was on one of my super skills. It's absolutely essential. So if we are going to be spending less informal time together, because we don't have the usual coffee machine chit chat or lunches with people, or just the informal time, then the small windows of opportunities we have as leaders have to be generous ones. They have to be giving out and radiating, and I'll talk about it, positive energy. It has to be checking in with them, and it's putting your own needs to one side. So it's giving people recognition, no matter how small what they've achieved. It doesn't matter, it's still recognition. And by doing that, you probably give them the energy they need for doing the next 2 or 3 hard labor work that they have for the rest of their day, or dealing with other challenges they may have to deal with. So no, thank you. I think we're very connected on that.
If I may, Chris, I would like to build on that, and I think this is really critical. It is one of the most critical aspects of working virtually. I just as an example, I spoke yesterday with a person who told me that she's really fed up of working virtually. She cannot stand her being all the day in front of a computer, all the day at home. She is experiencing Zoom fatigue. because of that missing, that human link that you were mentioning, she feels she's not listened to.
Yeah.
And celebrated, but also listen to the moments of fatigue and the motivation that she's experiencing.
Yeah.
So the celebration, recognition, and also you were mentioning while speaking, support in the process of achieving a goal when the person is overwhelmed by work, by meetings, and in addition to being at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
In the background there, she has a young girl, a young adolescent. So
yeah.
she I mean, just that.
Yeah, no, and it builds on very much to Piotr. Thank you, the human moment. And Robert, I've picked up your comment. I'll talk about that in a second as well. But there's some very interesting comments coming in on the chat. So thank you for everyone sharing your thoughts. It's always very interesting, isn't it, to despite the global nature of this call and what everyone is dialing into, the things we talk about, there's so much commonality between them. It's kind of so obvious, isn't it? But let me go on. Let me talk about the five remaining magic skills, and this links into the EI as well. So I'm going to reshare my screen, if I may, and I'm going to hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to again reflect together and somehow conclude. There's one more Mentimeter as well that we will do. So super skill 5 we've just talked about. Let me talk about the magic skill 1. I love this picture. I'm a big dog fan. For those of you who know, I also have a dog. So and I haven't given her the love and attention she's needed. She hasn't been out for a proper walk for a couple of days, and she's looking at me with very big eyes. So but she's not a Labrador like this one. Magic skill 1. So now we link this into the emotional intelligence. Some of you are experts in this field. So let me just give you my 2 cents worth on this. When we get up in the morning, when we start our Monday morning, we have to be aware of where we are on the scale of our own feeling and our own emotions. We have to. We owe that to ourselves. We owe that to our teams. We might have had a bad Sunday. We might have been asked by our children to do homework late at night and be frustrated because we didn't have the Sunday evening we were aspiring towards. We might have had a bit of a tension with our partners. Whatever it is, we might have had a client who really annoyed us. Whatever it is, we may not be in a good state. We may be in a very good state. Be careful and be aware, because the little moments and windows of opportunity that we have in the virtual meetings with our global teams or virtual teams, we will radiate whatever we are feeling in that moment. So we'll talk about authenticity in a second, but just be aware of where you are on that scale yourself. We are accountable for radiating as much positivity as possible because we have people dependent on that to be able to do the same thing with their clients and their teams. So this idea of radiation and knowing what you radiate, because and no one's expecting us all to be supermen and super women or super anything. Okay, this is a magic skill where we should be expecting to be magic, but just be really grounded in knowing where you are. Second magic skill, awareness of others. So over the last months, over the last couple of years, I've had tears. I've had people super stressed out. I've had people really suffering. I've had people with health issues. I've had people with separations. I've had everything. Okay, I've had everything. I am no judge. I am not in any way, I don't have the qualifications to judge that. But what I have to be in that moment is very aware of what other people are coping with, and very aware of how that might impact their levels of ability to participate, to encourage, to give, to be motivated, because they're not in the right space they need to be in. So that's when, as a leader, we have to, that's why we put the cameras on. I mean, this is a really simple thing. The number of meetings that I am part of with clients, internal or external, where people don't have their cameras on. If you want to be an effective EI leading leader, you need the cameras on at some point in that meeting. You need to be able to engage with people face to face. Not everyone can be on the camera all the time, that's fine. But if you're responsible and accountable for a team, then we owe it to the team to be looking into the eyes and watching the nonverbal behavior as much as listening to the tone of voice and all the other nonverbals that we see. So this awareness of others is absolutely critical. You won't be able to delegate challenging projects or tasks if somebody's not in the right space. It's kind of, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. All right. So that for me, and the routines and rituals, I want to talk about global and cultural differences. When I'm working with people who are based in the Philippines, or when I'm working with people who are based in Nigeria, and this happens, okay, or when I'm people who are based in London, doesn't matter where they are in the world, I have to be seeing things with cultural glasses on. Okay, so their ability and their needs for their own local cultural routines and rituals and what's going on at a geo-economical level, or what's going on for them just at a very simple cultural level, because they have, I don't know, they have Diwali in India, and I need to be respectful of that, and they can't deliver during that period. Whatever it is, I have to be sensitive to that. So the awareness goes beyond just EI awareness. I would call it cultural intelligence as well. And to remain curious and to ask questions, and because that will impact the way you shape and deliver on whatever team deliverables you need to deliver on together and agree on. Authenticity. I'm going to focus on this idea of safe place, whole self, and trust. They're really big concepts. So in a nutshell, if you show up as the person you really are, if you come to work with the whole you, okay, if you are able to be generous in that sense and share the sort of day you've had, or share the sort of frustrations you might feel without it becoming a sort of a moaning session, if you can do that in a way which is factual and honest and open, you are showing what I call the whole self. If you do that, your team will do that. We need the team to do that, because that helps us shape where we're going with the team. For those of you who know the trust equation, it's a fantastic concept. It's one of my favorites. The trust equation with Meister, I can see some nodding, so I can see some of you know that, which is fantastic. My favorite two variables in the equation, for those of you who are interested, it's the Meister equation. You can Google it, M-A-I-S-T-E-R. If someone wants to put that in the chat on behalf of everyone else, then we can help each other. My favorite two dimensions are intimacy and self-orientation. Okay, you need to be a leader who has relatively low several levels of self-orientation when you are leading global meetings, or you are facilitating sort of interaction between a large group. You need to lead from the back. You need to be the servant leader. So the orientation for self needs to go down. So the agendas that you build need to be focused on, yes, what's needed for the business, but getting the buy-in for people. So the self-orientation needs to be on the lower side in group moments. And the other thing is, think about how you create intimacy. Think about how you create intimacy with the people you're connecting with. It might be a little message of thanks during a meeting. It may be mentioning something or building on a comment they've made. But think about how you share generously the moment of intimacy with as many people as you can cover within the team meetings you have. And this one for me is a very important one, because it's all about building trust. Again, part of the EI model that many of you are familiar with. Fourth magic skill, again with sort of leading remote and hybrid teams in mind. So I was confronted with a decision. And this is all about decision making and communicating. I was confronted with a decision of whether or not we bid for a huge project. Now, the team is under pressure. The team is backed up. This is the time of year we don't need any more stress, because we've got enough balls in the air that we're already juggling. So in consultation with the team, we agreed that we would not pitch for the piece of business. Now, ironically, this has never happened. It actually came back and they asked us whether we could pinch, and they wanted to give us more time, and we happened to have won the deal. But I have to say, it's never happened to me that to protect the team, we made a decision in a consultative way to not go for a huge proposal. And I know it was the right decision. And that decision was made considering the facts, which were very linear, which was unreasonable request, not enough time to deliver on the proposal we needed to do, probably not being able to deliver on every single thing needed in the tender. But the other one was actually just feelings of people in the team. The people were feeling stressed, they're feeling overworked, under pressure, and feeling bad And so if I don't make the decision in consultation with them that it's okay that we say no, then we might find ourselves in a situation where we do something that actually we're going to regret, and we might actually damage something in the process. So for me, the magic skill around communication and communication of decisions, and considering balancing in your decision-making processes and sharing that, what are facts and what are the feelings and emotions of people, and what we might damage if we don't consider both of those elements. Resilience. This is the last of the magic skills as we, come towards hopefully a mini Q&A session. Resilience, we all know what that means. We've all felt moments of when we're more resilient or less resilient. We are human beings, thank goodness. It's a good reminder that we're alive. But as a leader, I talk about the oxygen mask. As a leader, we need to put on our oxygen mask before we can put it on other people. We need to learn to be able to look after ourselves, so we have the stretch and the bandwidth to also take care of other people. So our own well-being and our own rituals and routines around how we stay in balance from a professional and a personal perspective are very important, because that allows us to be in a resilient state to then coach and encourage other people to do exactly the same thing. So there's a lot of, again, in a lot of high-level concepts within that. One thing I've personally missed, this authentic moment I've personally missed, has being able to physically move, because I've had my leg in a cast and not being able to move in an orthopedic boot for 12 weeks, which I can tell you, for someone like me, who is high energy and extremely dynamic, very active, very sporty, has been a real challenge. But I have got through it. I've driven probably my family members crazy, because they've had to make me my food and teas for the last 2.5 months, because I haven't been able to do anything, but now I'm back. And it's been a fantastic learning, because it's reminded me of what I need to stay resilient, which is nature, being out there in the fresh air and just breathing and just enjoying moments of being alone to be able to give to the larger team and community. So again, the magic skill, the resilience, don't underestimate how powerful that can be. So I'm going to stop there in terms of presentation. And we have one more little Mentimeter, and then we can open up just for a few minutes of questions for those who can stick around. What best practices have you seen for leading remote teams? So this is a little moment of let's share together. Let's share out there. What is it you see as a team member that you think works really well to inspire you to want to continue to work in the way you are with someone who does that with you? And what do you do? What do you observe maybe with other leaders in your client organizations, internal, external, which you think work really well? The little nuggets, just looking for some little nuggets. I've shared, certainly from my side, some of the things that I do and I continue to learn to do. And it'll be never ending. There'll always be a learning process around this. But I'm curious to see whether any of you have any other little nuggets, little tricks, little tips, especially for you. And by all means, you can use the chat, or you can also use the Mentimeter. Thanks, Robert, and I'll come back to you. Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. Great, you put in the trust equation. That's wonderful. And there was something earlier you said as well, which I'd like to just go back to. Yeah, really interesting to reflect on experience of what we used to call virtual global teams when we relied on phone conferences and sharing spreadsheets rather than bespoke collaborative tools and platforms. Some leaders, unfortunately, still operate this way despite improvements, absolutely. So the work is cut out for us to continue to spread the word of what is effectively working results, but you can certainly do things in a more emotionally intelligent way to still get the result. Robert, you also said clarifying who is working where on that particular day, so allowing for work to be quite seamless and people covering for each other, and maybe one person A is not available on the Monday afternoon, but maybe that can be picked up by person B. Great, there's some nice things coming through. Would anyone like to comment You don't have to hear my voice anymore. Anyone like to comment on something? Someone who hasn't said something so far? If you're able to. I have a really international group on the session this morning. Telling jokes. Yeah, if you're good at jokes, tell jokes. I'm not very good at jokes. I always tell the punchline before I get to the joke. So I'm not a good joke teller. The only thing I'd say about jokes is just make sure they're culturally appropriate, because some jokes work better in some cultures than others. Listen actively. Yeah. We have 2 eyes and 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that's like 4-to-1 ratio. Silence is also a message. Someone being quiet. I'm not sure who shared that. Would anyone like to comment on that or share that if they've written that in there? If you can. Okay. Silence is also a message. I always see that silence in very, very cultural terms. Some cultures have a lot of silence in them, a lot of pauses. There's been a lot of interesting things on the internet recently, on LinkedIn, around the Japanese culture. It's a very good example of a culture that has a lot of pauses in it. And the pauses are there to show respect to the other side and show we've listened carefully. So when we come from cultures where communication is more overlapping, so it's the opposite. So one person speaks, another one speaks, and someone speaks on top. Typically of many of the Mediterranean cultures, or what we call more emotional languages, we need to be careful that silence is not because they'd have nothing to say, it's because they're reflecting respectfully on what we've said, and they will come back in due time. So I really like that comment. Silence is also a message. It tells us a lot. We just need to be careful not to under or overinterpret it.
It is also about the change in people's behaviors. Like when we are leader of a team and we see that people become silent, it might be also a sign. So that was also my understanding. I really like also your comment. However, my thought was that sometimes we have people talkative on the meetings, and in a moment they become silent. They do not comment. They don't send a message that something's wrong, but they remain closed. And that's also maybe a reason to have one-to-one meeting with them to go deeper and find the reason.
Yeah, lovely observation, Ava. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Really nice. Yeah, I've got a couple of comments coming in as well. The hosting function is critical. Perhaps it's more of a concierge type of approach. I don't know whether you can speak, Rob, but I'm really enjoying your comments. I like this idea of concierge because that works for me living in France. What is it you meant by that? Difficult at the moment. Okay, no worries at all. Again, you know, these are things we need to be doing. Understanding the fact not everyone can contribute because we have our own situations to manage in the background. But this idea of facilitation and hosting and concierge and taking care of and ensuring the experience is a positive one. I think that's what you mean by that, Robert. Great. Good. I'm going to close there and be respectful of your times. And time availabilities. Are there any questions or other comments from the group?
Just a big thank you for a great session.
Thank you, MC. That's kind. Yeah. Good. It's always funny these sessions, isn't it? Some places you know, some you don't. There's always something to learn from each other, but you've been wonderful on the chat. So it's been a really nice way of interacting like that. I know it's short and sharp. If anyone has any questions or comments, by all means, I'll stick my email address in the chat for you. MC Clarice Merritt, you have this already. But by all means, reach out to me if there's anything else you'd like to share on. Always very happy to connect or connect with me on LinkedIn. But a huge thank you from me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up this morning. And for those of you joining more sessions, I wish you a wonderful learning opportunity for the future Facet 5 live events.